We have some breaking news. The NHL has finally handed down its punishment to the Arizona Coyotes for the testing of junior age player scandal that's been discussed now for quite some time. And we also have some pretty significant updates on the Montreal Canadiens and St. Louis Blues. We'll jump into all the latest news coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. And of course, as you can see, we're not outdoors right now. It's an incredibly windy day out there. We had a hard time getting the other video from today completed because of the crazy high winds we're having here. So we thought we'd change things up and give you a little bit of scenery here from inside my living room window. Of course, we live here on a golf course, so you see a bit of a golf course in behind me here in the background. Now, of course, as I mentioned, we have some breaking news, and it's pretty significant regarding the Arizona Coyotes. We have a situation now where the commissioner, Gary Bettman, has handed down punishment to the Coyotes organization for basically being guilty for testing undrafted players outside of the NHL Combine. Of course, that's why the Combine is there, so all teams have equal access and the same tests and everything like that. And the Coyotes basically were accused of doing a lot of testing outside of that, which was not permitted and breaks the Constitution and different laws that the NHL has in place with its league. So what the punishment is the following. They are losing a second-round pick this year, the 2020 NHL Draft, and they are losing their first-round pick in next year's 2021 NHL Draft. So that's pretty significant. They already don't have their first-round pick from this year in 2020 because they traded that as part of the Taylor Hall trade to the Devils. So they don't have that. They don't have their third-round pick as well, and now they lose their second. So they don't have a pick in the first 3 rounds of this very deep 2020 NHL Draft. That's pretty significant for a team who's certainly, still kind of rebuilding. They made some strides this year, but they're still struggling to score. They still have a lot of work to do to become a, legitimate, consistent playoff contender and have any shot at being a cup contender. They have a long ways to go. Of course, we saw General Manager John Chayka leave the organization not that long ago. He had a major opportunity with another organization, which I'm not really sure what's going to come from that, but clearly Chayka was ultimately the head of the Department of Hockey Operations, so he's technically responsible here. So Gary Bettman has chosen not to inflict any other personal direct punishment on anybody else that works in the Coyotes front office who may have been involved or had knowledge of this kind of situation and what was going on. He also did not impose any kind of financial penalties. Of course, the ownership group, they're pretty new. They obviously don't want to have major penalties right off the bat, and they were technically not the owners when this was going on. So I guess Bettman found it fair to go this route instead and punish them as a team and lose draft picks, which, like I said, in my opinion, is pretty significant. Now, in next year's draft, like I said, they're already without their first down because they have to forfeit it for this penalty. Then they also, their third-round pick next year was a conditional pick in the Taylor Hall trade as well. And if Hall re-signs, and that upgrades to a second-round pick that they have to give to New Jersey. So they could be without picks in rounds 1 and 2 next year, or even if they do lose Hall, it'll be 1 and 3. Either way, again, that's the first 3 rounds this year off the table. Next 3 rounds next year, or they've only had 1 selection. So clearly, that is pretty significant. One of the quotes from Gary Bettman indicates that personnel from the Coyotes involved in this situation acted in a grossly negligent manner. So that's some pretty condemning comments there. Clearly they did. They had to have known what they were doing was wrong and against the NHL rules between their bylaws and the Constitution that they hold up to make things fair across the board. So clearly, like I said, the Coyotes have responded here as well. Ownership group has put out a statement basically saying that they have new controls and compliance measures in place to make sure something like this never happens again. Obviously, I know the ownership group, I know they were on pretty good terms with Chayka when they first bought the team, but obviously they must be really disappointed to find out all this information and to have this penalty handed down. Clearly, like I said, they could have had the right to impose a major financial penalty as well, but Bettman said he felt that this was more appropriate. So you can't help but wonder if everything wouldn't have happened with Chayka if he would have been maybe let go because of this situation afterwards anyways. Did he maybe know a little bit more about the investigation? Did he see the writing on the wall? I mean, obviously this other opportunity was presented to himself, and we're led to believe it was an opportunity with the Devils organization. Of course, they own multiple sports franchises, and it was believed to be like a high-level role overseeing analytics and different things for the whole company as a overhead here. So we'll see what happens. But Chayka might have known more and maybe decided to get out before he was forced out. I mean, you can't help but wonder. Really, I mean, he's a smart guy. So yeah, obviously this was not a smart decision, but clearly, you know, it's a big deal in Arizona. And of course, we've had a lot of swirling rumors in the last just few days about Captain Oliver Ekman-Larsson in Arizona as well, with Elliot Friedman kind of dropping what I thought to be somewhat of a rumor bomb on Saturday headlines this past weekend, saying that it's a player to keep your eye on, that he's been told that his future with the organization is certainly in jeopardy or in doubt. There could be a move there. I'm not sure what ownership wants to do. So clearly, you can't help but wonder if this could be a spin-off effect from this controversy and this penalty. I mean, obviously, I would think that even though this was just announced by the NHL today, that they've probably been having a lot of meetings and they probably had an idea what was coming. I would think. So maybe they will look at moving on from Ekman-Larsson as a way to recoup draft picks. That's certainly a possibility. I mean, you would think now, if the NHL teams out there that have tons of draft picks, you're looking at teams like Montreal, Ottawa, New Jersey, there's lots of teams with lots that are loaded with picks, that maybe they can take advantage of Arizona's situation and get themselves some good players off their roster to help them restock the cupboards for the future. I mean, it's a prime opportunity, and you know the phone is going to be ringing here for interim GM Steve Sullivan, I would think. And I would think that right now, because he's interim and everything going on, that I would imagine ownership is going to be heavily involved with a lot of those decisions. So certainly some pretty significant news in Arizona. We'll have to see how this is going to impact them. And like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if maybe the future of Ekman-Larsson is somewhat linked to this situation, because they could go the route of looking for mainly future assets in a trade for him, and they could certainly recoup a fair bit of what they've lost here through this penalty that's being imposed by Gary Bettman in the NHL. So we'll see what happens. Let me know your thoughts. Do you think this penalty and punishment is fair? And what are the Coyotes going to do? How will they react moving forward here? Now, the other news we have today, of course, is on Montreal and St. Louis. In Montreal's case, we have word that head coach Claude Julien is fully expected to be completely recovered, at least to the point that he's going to be able to coach next year. So he will be back. He will be behind the bench, and he's expected to make a full recovery, which is great news from him from a personal health standpoint. But obviously, he inked a long-term contract with the Habs when he was first hired there by Marc Bergevin. Obviously, the Habs have some good assistant coaches who were able to take over there, but obviously, Julien is the guy right now. So clearly, that's good news for Montreal. Now, in the case of the St. Louis Blues, they did get some relatively bad news that St. Louis Blues winger Vladimir Tarasenko, who we know had major shoulder surgery at the end of last season and was obviously battling that a lot this year, and then ran into some additional issues during the playoffs, ended up leaving the bubble, was seeking other medical opinions, and he is going to need an additional surgery, and he could be evaluated in 5 months' time. That's a pretty significant blow for the sniper for the St. Louis Blues here, who is, over the last number of years has been a big part of their offense in St. Louis. So if you take a look here, I mean, I'm sure he's likely going to be seeking multiple opinions in the coming weeks before he has the surgery. Doug Armstrong, the Blues general manager, indicated that he could be having surgery sometime here relatively soon, and it would only be reevaluated in 5 months. Not that he's necessarily going to be back on the ice, but reevaluated. So clearly, if you take a look at the timeline here of the current season, we're looking at almost September. So September, October, November, December, January. So if the season does start in December, as the NHL is hoping and anticipating, then clearly he's going to miss probably 6 to 8 weeks of the season if everything goes well. If he needs a little bit more recovery time than that, he could possibly even miss maybe upwards of 3 months. It's hard to say because you just don't know how the surgery is going to go and how the recovery process is going to go, because he did indicate that the previous surgery just didn't take as well as they were hoping for, and he wasn't 100% even, I think, when camps opened up here. So bad news for Tarasenko. He's had a lot of issues with the shoulders. You can't help but wonder how much of an impact it's going to have on the remainder of his career. It's going to impact his ability to be productive and play. So certainly some question marks looming there for the Blues. But one thing that might help them now is might help them buy some time and get some other deals done, because as we know, they can use the long-term injury reserve as a cap relief to offset things. So if he goes on LTIR and he's going to miss the first few months of the season, if they do re-sign Alex Pietrangelo, they could delay making another move or two to free up the cap space to make sure that they're cap compliant when he does come back. So if anything, that's a big contract to go on long-term injury reserve. Like I said, like we've seen that happen with the Leafs this year. Same idea. They took their advantage of the relief that they had. They had a lot of injuries, and it has helped delay moves being made so they could take their time and make sure they get the right move and the best deal they could find out there to solve this situation that was pressing. So we'll see what happens here with Tarasenko and how much of an impact it'll have on next season. I know there's already been reports out there that they could be starting next year with as many as is 4 NHL bubbles, depending on if they're able to have fans in attendance or not. I mean, it's pretty fair to say that come November, December, you know that all NHL cities are not going to be able to have fans in attendance. That's a pretty safe bet, and it is possible as well that all 4 hub cities again could be in Canada, given the stats and the numbers of COVID-19 compared to the United States. So clearly, it's difficult to say what happens, but I know they're exploring all options right now just in case they can't return to normal. And obviously, there's a pretty high likelihood, given the close proximity here, that is going to be the case, that they're going to have an alternate arrangement, alternate setup like they have here for these 2020 Stanley Cup playoffs. So let me know your thoughts on that. I mean, with the talk on the 4 bubbles, there's basically looking at rotating here in like maybe 8-game schedules and having a time, like a break in between to go home and be with family, because you know the NHL players are not going to go an entire season without having family time. That's just not going to happen. But if they can go play for a few weeks in a bubble, get 8 games in, have a break, and obviously there'll have to be a little bit more risk involved with that, because obviously when they go home, are they going to have to isolate and stay at home the whole time, or how's that going to work? Difficult to say, because that could also have impact on their family's ability to, kind of be out and about. And anyways, hard to say. A lot of questions there, not enough answers, but the NHL is already planning ahead with all these different scenarios to try to make sure that they can get next season in and hopefully at least have some fans in attendance. I mean, could be a similar situation to the NFL where they do have maybe a percentage of capacity, whether it be a quarter or half or something smaller, so that they can sell some tickets and recoup some revenue. So let me know your thoughts on everything discussed here today, and we'll discuss further down in the comments section. But some pretty significant news today in those 3 organizations. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.